Hi, I'm Dilek Nur Taş from Selçuk University, Turkey, and I will be presenting the paper named Does Observing Social Exclusion Increase Dehumanization? The Role of Victims' Disability Status during the session. During the course of this talk, I will first present the theoretical basis of our study. After presenting the study hypothesis, I will continue with its methodological details. Exclusion occurs when other people are around. Even though observers report that they have a positive attitude toward the victims of exclusion, they mostly have negative feelings about them. Also, victims of exclusion are held responsible and considered guilty of their exclusion by biased observers. People think that victims deserve their exclusion. This point of view contributes to further exclusion of them in society. Kahneman has defined dehumanization as denying a person's characteristics as an individual independent human and his interconnectedness as part of a social network. So social bonds are essential for being evaluated as human. Studies at the intersection of exclusion and dehumanization are mainly concerned with victims' self-evaluation of their humanness. For instance, Bastian and Haslam et al. Found that victims of exclusion evaluate themselves as less human. Yet, there are fewer studies about victims' perceived humanness from a third-person perspective. Park and Park demonstrate that observers dehumanize the victims of social exclusion. Also, they found that perpetrators of social exclusion were evaluated more human. According to Kim et al., social exclusion and disability are related, and exclusion largely affects others' perception of disability. Because they are perceived as different, disabled individuals are exposed to exclusion when they are stigmatized as disabled. Also, Kim et al. Empathize that disabled people encounter exclusion in every area of life. Additionally, Bae and Kim state that as the level of disability increases, the level of exclusion also increases. Studies on disability are rarely found in the psychological literature. Capozzo et al. And Parker et al. Found that disabled people are evaluated as less human. Furthermore, O'Brien demonstrated that disabled people are dehumanized by the analogy of parasites. In the current study, in line with the previous literature, we hypothesized that observing social exclusion would increase dehumanization. Also, we expected that disabled people would be evaluated less human. Lastly, in our research question, we examined whether disabled people would be further dehumanized when they are seen as victims of exclusion. We rectified 163 participants for the present study. Since there were 4 different between subjects conditions, we randomly assigned approximately 35 participants to each experimental condition. We created 4 conditions by writing different scenarios for the current study. In the scenarios, the protagonist was either disabled and excluded, disabled and included, healthy and excluded, healthy and included. The scenario you see involves the disability and exclusion condition, which change the underlined parts in the remaining 3 scenarios according to the experimental conditions. In the scenarios, we separated the victims and perpetrators with their names. Ahsen was the protagonist who was either excluded or included by her classmates, namely Cemre and Özge. Her disability status was also manipulated by describing her as using a wheelchair or not. After the scenarios, we present the manipulation check questions in making sure that the participants understood who was excluded or included by whom. Additionally, we ask participants how much they like each character in the scenario on a 5-point scale. To measure the degree of dehumanization of the characters, a trait-based dehumanization measure adapted from the dual model of dehumanization was used. According to this model, there are two primary components set to humanness. Human nature traits exist in every human being and differentiate humans from robots. These traits are innate and universal. On the other hand, human uniqueness traits differentiate humans from animals. These traits are accurate rather than inborn. Culture plays a role in the development of these traits. In our measure, each humanness dimension was represented by 5 positive and 5 negative traits. In total, we present participants 20 traits on 7-point Likert scales. Participants were asked to evaluate the extent to which they believe that victims and perpetrators have those traits. Before the results, we assessed the degree of human nature and human uniqueness traits ascribed to 2 perpetrators. As you might check in this table, the human uniqueness and human nature scores for 2 perpetrators were highly correlated. As a result, we calculated the mean human uniqueness and human nature scores for 2 perpetrators and used it as a single value. As you can see, the liking for the scenario characters was correlated with the dependent variables. Consequently, this variable was controlled for during the hypothesis testing. For separate 3-way mixed ANCOVAs were conducted. While valence was a within subject factor, the other 2 independent variables were between subject factors. In this study, we addressed human nature and human uniqueness traits attributed to the victim and perpetrators as the dependent variables. We found that excluded people are dehumanized more than non-excluded people for both human nature and human uniqueness traits. We conducted simple effects analysis for understanding the interreaction effects. According to the results, the victim was dehumanized only on the positive human nature and human uniqueness traits. The difference concerning negative human nature traits wasn't statistically significant. It might be due to the low reliability of this trait set. On the other hand, excluded people were less dehumanized on negative human nature traits. Human uniqueness traits. We can conclude that the results yielded partial support to our first hypothesis. This table shows the dehumanization fact, which is seen only on positive traits. When people are rated as low on both positive and negative traits, this means they are dehumanized. Even though negative traits are semantically less desirable, they are accepted as aspects of humanness. So in the dehumanization literature, a dehumanized target is expected to be low on negative human traits as well. Nevertheless, in this study, both victim and perpetrators were only rated low on positive traits. but high on negative traits. This situation is in contradiction with our expectations. Yet, it is possible that participants might have rated the scenario characters high on negative traits because they have perceived them as undesirable. Also, they might have wanted to be consistent in their responses by rating positive traits low and negative traits high. The results also show that disabled people are not dehumanized more than healthy people. As a result, our second hypothesis was not supported. You can see the described statistics concerning the disability status. We found that disabled people weren't dehumanized more than healthy people independent of their exclusion or inclusion experience. Moreover, at a marginal significance level, disabled people were evaluated as more human on positive human nature traits. This finding might be indicating the possibility that disabled people are perceived as warmer than healthy people. As for our research questions, the three-way interaction effect was not statistically significant for either human nature or human uniqueness traits. So the results were not conclusive regarding our research question. We don't have any hypothesis for the perpetrators, but we have reached the statistically significant findings concerning them as well. Park and Park found that perpetrators are seen as more human when they exclude rather than include others. Unlike them, we found that the excluding characters were more dehumanized than the including characters. Why might we dehumanize the perpetrators of exclusion? The studies show that those who harm others, those who display rude and uncivilized behavior, and those who violate the norms are dehumanized. Social exclusion is often seen similar to these behaviors. In this respect, it is understandable why observers might attribute less humanness to the perpetrators of social exclusion. The descriptive statistics concerning the humanness of perpetrators can be seen in this table. As you can see, the perpetrators are only dehumanized on positive traits like the victim. When it comes to our limitations, we can speculate that human nature and human uniqueness traits may be affected by cultural difference. As a result, our expectations concerning the positive and negative traits might have not supported by the present data. Additionally, we didn't control for whether participants have any relations with disabled people. Future research should control this variable. Now, I want to share our take-home message. We dehumanize both victim and perpetrators when we observe social exclusion regardless of victims' disability status. Thanks for the time and consideration. I hope you benefit from our study.